Do we have the courage to face the realities of our time and allow ourselves to feel deeply enough that it transforms us and our future? Come with me on a journey through the eye of beauty. Across an ocean of grief. And beyond.
A Scottish fishing trawler returns from the North Sea with its catch.
Oi, Captain, can I buy some of your fish?
Sorry, mister. But first the fish have to be shipped to China to be cleaned. Once they're shipped back, then you can buy some.
China?
Yeah.
A 10,000-mile return trip?
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a busy environmental organization gets some troubling news.
One column had 3-line bank.
Get a load of this, boss.
Well, I'll be. Listen to this. We import over 300,000 tons of potatoes in a year.
I guess we need potatoes, right?
Then why do we export almost the same amount? What? Same thing with sugar, beef, and lots of other foods. And we're not the only country doing this. Look what's happening in the UK.
Yeah, what the heck?
Makes no sense, does it?
Looks like another case of insane trade.
Oh, must be they don't believe in climate change, do they?
I can't believe it.
On a lonely country road, a young man wrestles with his demons.
Mary's right. I've been a real sap about food. I bought corporate global food because it was cheaper. Now I see it's only cheaper because of subsidies and tax breaks that we all pay for, including me. And that's not all. The global food system is killing rural life, ruining small farmers like Mary's dad. I tell you, I had it figured all wrong. Now that I know the score, I see how insane global food is. I promise you, Mary, from now on, I'm only buying local food.
I love you, Jack.
Welcome to today's news.
As all the news.
Over 800 million people are chronically hungry.
International hunger.
Famine is the worst in living memory.
Welcome everybody to the Global Landscapes Forum, and thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this. It's a total privilege to be involved in such an inspiring and pioneering organisation. So without further ado, I'm Jamie Crummy, one of the co-founders of Too Big To Go, which is the world's largest consumer platform for fighting food waste. So quite simply, our platform connects consumers with retailers who have surplus food for sale through our app. So in our short history, we've saved over 12 million meals from going to waste from over 18,000 different food businesses in 11 countries in Europe. So our mission, we're all about fighting food waste. We want to inspire and empower people to take action on this matter. Over a third of all food produced ends up going in the bin. Now that equates to 1.6 billion tons of food every single year, or 50 tons per second. Not kilos, but tons. So we can really see the impact that food waste has from a moral, social and financial perspective, particularly in how much it's costing us to throw this food away. But the connection between food waste and the environment is massive. Food waste is having devastating consequences on our planet. 8% of greenhouse gas emissions come from food being thrown away. But that's not food production, that's food waste. Meaning that if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter after the US and China. So what we're really asking people to do is, whether it's using platforms like Too Big To Go to rescue food from the bin, or changing the way that you shop, or even getting creative in the kitchen with leftovers or the like. Let's get inspired, let's get informed, and let's fight food waste together. Thanks very much, guys.
I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you about the connections between nutrition and climate change today. I've got 5 points to make. Nutrition and climate change are really importantly connected. 2 ways on the mitigation side, 2 ways on the adaptation side, and then 1 way in a sort of a universal connection. So on the mitigation side, we know that what we grow and what we eat has a big impact on greenhouse gas emission. We know that animal source foods tend to have higher greenhouse gas emissions than plant-based foods, and we know that animal source foods, if eaten in excess, tend to be less good for your health. So reducing and switching from animal source foods to plant-based foods, if you're consuming a lot of that, is a good thing for your health, and it's a good thing for the planet's health and for greenhouse gas emissions. But that's not possible for all populations, and there are some populations in Africa and Asia and Latin America that we actually want more animal source foods to be consumed. And And so we are going to have to produce animal source foods in the future. And the demand is probably going to increase, not decrease. So the second point is, for mitigation, we have to find ways of producing animal source food that have a smaller environmental footprint, especially when it comes to greenhouse gas emission. We need to decouple the production of animal source food from greenhouse gas emissions, and that's my second point. On the adaptation side of the house, obviously we know that climate change is generating droughts where there weren't droughts and floods where there weren't floods before. And on the drought side of things, we have to find plants and agriculture that is more resistant to droughts, more resilient. And on the flooding side of things, we have to find, again, crops and animals that are more resilient to excess water and excess salination. So there's a real challenge to the breeders to come up with varieties of foods that are more resilient to these new environmental stresses. Also, on the adaptation side, we know that higher greenhouse gas emissions, especially CO2 emissions, are actually going to reduce the amount of micronutrients in some key cereals and root crops, such as zinc in rice. So another response is going to be, how do we find cereals that are high in micronutrients? How do we find these so-called biofortified crops that rely on traditional breeding mechanisms to get more iron, zinc, vitamin A and vitamin D into our cereals and roots and tubers? But perhaps the most important connection between nutrition and climate is the opportunity for new alliances. There's a really strong alignment between these two communities that haven't traditionally come together. And if they can find these new alliances, if they can make them work, then we can all be working together for a food system or a set of food systems that not only produce and promote human health, but also promote planetary health. So one set of human health outcomes can coexist with one set of good planetary health outcomes. Thank you.
From up here, our planet looks perfect. It's only when we look more closely that we start to see some of the results of our consumption. Does anyone know what happens to it all? This is not just a local problem.
Somehow in the deep ocean, we've got more trash than life.
We produce too much waste. We don't think about the consequences when we throw stuff away.
It seems to be a case of out of sight, out of mind.
Nature functions by building up and breaking down, building up and breaking down. We keep putting things into the environment that don't break down.
Everyone in the population today has these chemicals in their bodies.
It's everywhere. It causes all sorts of diseases.
Woman has a way of getting rid of them. It's called having a baby.
We did it with smoking, the smoking ban. We did it with seatbelts and wearing seatbelts. We did it with drink driving, actually, when that became unacceptable. We need to do this with waste.
Perhaps times will change and we will.
We communicate who we are through clothing. It is fundamentally a part of what we wish to communicate about ourselves.
We used to have a system, a fashion system. That has absolutely nothing to do with the fashion industry today. It has been reinvented.
It's based on materialism.
The problem is that comes at a really high price.
Garment factory collapsed, killing more than 1,000.
Clashes between clothes factory workers and riot police in Cambodia.
Last November, 112 people were killed in another major factory fire. 30,000 Chinese workers have been on strike.
Garment workers in Bangladesh paying the price for cheap clothing.
Well, the promise of globalization was that it was going to be a win-win, that consumers in the rich world would get cheaper goods and people in the poorer parts of the world would get jobs, and that those jobs would give them an opportunity to work their way out of poverty.
This enormous, rapacious industry that is generating so much profit, why is it that it is unable to support millions of its workers properly?
The actual business model is completely unsustainable. Unless you change that model, you can't change anything.
When everything is concentrated on making profits, what you see is that human rights, the environment, workers' rights get lost.
My God, we can do better than this.
Hello everybody, my name is Ursula De Castro and I am the creative director and co-founder at Fashion Revolution. Thank you very much all of you at the Global Landscape Forum community for listening. So if I can quickly introduce to you Fashion Revolution, we are now the biggest global fashion activism movement in the world, and we were born in 2013 as a result of the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh. We have grown exponentially. We talk about transparency, we talk about the impact of the fashion industry on supply chain workers, their lives, and on the environment that we all share. Our hashtag, Who Made My Clothes, is now world famous. Last April, we reached something like 275 million people with it. But we don't just talk about transparency in the fashion supply chain. We really try to give our audience some strong, basic understanding on what each and every one of us can do in order to make a difference in the fashion supply chain. So looking at the environment, for instance, and the massive impact that the fashion industry has on our rivers, on our water, and on our soil. It depletes resources, but we also throw so much away that we really are abusing resources as well as abusing people. So if we all take the time to look at our wardrobe and imagine that we are in the fashion supply chain, then I am sure that we can find different ways to enjoy fashion, but slow down mass production, slow down accelerated consumption, and really try and make a difference every day with everything we do. Fashion Revolution Week this year is going to be from the 22nd until the 28th of April. There will be thousands of events globally. Please take a look at our Instagram feed at @fash_rev, or follow us on our website www.fashionrevolution.org to see what we can do, to see what's happening in your country and how you can take part. And if you can't, I urge you to look at our website anyway. All our resources are downloadable for free. You could look at our Fashion Transparency Index, you could look at our fanzines, and please, if you have a minute, take the time to sign our manifesto. We need you to be a fashion revolutionary. We can all be a part of change. Remember, it's just as important to ask who made my clothes as it is to remember that loved clothes last. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Fê Cortez. I'm an environmental activist and I was in GLF last year. I have this project here in Brazil called One Less Trash. It's an educational platform so that people can be informed of better ways to preserve nature, better ways to consume, better ways to live here in harmony with everything, with all that life we have. And we're going to have this amazing roundtable on May 13th to discuss here in Brazil what big industries and small industries in fashion here in Brazil are doing to avoid climate change or to make their impact a little bit less harmful than they used to be. I think it's going to be amazing, and Brazil is huge and our fashion industry is huge, so it matters to everyone what's being done here. See you there.
It's no turning back for the government on plastic bags, following their outlawing as from Monday.
The penalties are the highest in the world. 4 years in jail, and the maximum penalty is $38,000 US.
We cannot continue living in this kind of an environment that is so dirty, so polluted with plastic bags, plastic waste. Something needs to be done.
We made it very clear that there are not going to be any arrests this week as people familiarize themselves with the new regulations.
So from next week? Kenya, before the ban, was messed up. I felt that I should do something. I started complaining. I started writing on why plastic bags should be banned. One day, the cabinet secretary, Judy Wahungu, tweeted back. She supported my campaign. 2 years later, she banned plastic bags.
We had to set the penalties so high so that we, as citizens, understand the dangers of these polythene bags and the plastic pollutants.
Initially, I lost some customers. My observation is they are catching up. They are coming with reusable bags. It's normal for human beings. They resist change, but in the long run, they adapt.
My end goal is not to see that we don't have plastic. My end goal is to see more sustainable use. And the second life of plastic is where we need to begin.
We are destroying our own life. Everywhere you see plastic. When you go fishing, you see plastic. When you're pulling your nets, you catch more plastic than fish. I had a dream to do something to make people understand the importance of the environment. We are making a beautiful plastic dhow, completely made of pure recycled plastic, from the keel to everything. I think it's the first in this world.
This circular economy philosophy is beginning to get traction here. Innovators have been able to produce beautiful, reusable products using plastics and are able to earn some income, and we're very excited about that.
When I see plastic, I see color, I see beauty. I see something that I can use to make something. We cannot call those things trash, we just call them recyclables.
Recycling is not totally self-sustainable. People don't realize how much
work and cost goes into recovering it from the environment. Somebody has to go pick it up. Somebody has to give it to somebody else. It's the guys in the streets who are making a few shillings. They're first environmentalists. Ali designs every piece of the boat. He will bring us the shape, and we're able to build a mold for it. We don't burn plastic, we melt. We compress it and let it cool. That's basically the process.
It looks like it's wood, but it's not a wood. It's pure plastic. It's not perfect, we know it. It cracks, it bends, it breaks. But it lasts forever.
Construction products create a good end use of plastic. In Kenya, we say it will last the life of your shamba, the life of your land.
The first communication of human lives was through the sea. There was no plane, it was only dhow. The dhow is communication.
Alice Kanda's work is just the beginning of big things to come.
To convert waste into something valuable, it takes that vision, it takes perseverance to do that.
Our plastic dhow is a message to the world. We have to tell our young kids the importance of taking care of our environment. Because they are the leaders tomorrow, it's better that we involve them and be truthful to the coming generation.
Will I last forever? I occupy myself in an attempt to master pressure. Things are moving too fast. What is this thing I can't remember? It's like I don't affect the world. I guess inhale the fumes from the cars as they're passing reckless. No one to stop and ask directions like, where's this world heading? Will it last forever? How do I affect the world? Do my actions mean much? We're desensitized to feel anything except the act of being touched. That touched a nerve. You observe as I tap into your conscious, expecting this numb culture to be touched by words. How do we affect the world? Do my actions mean much? As a kid, I'd dig up dirt, maybe snap a tree trunk, maybe throw away my food like I don't have to eat lunch, put my bottle in the bin that's black and not the green one. Lights on, forget about the kids that have nothing, except the strength to carry buckets of water on their heads walking home as I leave the tap running, I can't stop running. Where to go when I don't know what's coming? I can't deceive myself, that's something. If we ain't conscious, then we ain't living. Does this trigger some sort of pain within? You can't live with this, now you're blaming him, her or them. Where does the change begin? What can I do in my daily life? I ain't saying I'm gonna change the world, but we could maybe try to instill a new wave of thinking into a new baby's eyes, but this is just one tale, 1989.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill, Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
Hi, thanks for joining the Global Landscapes Forum segment on lifestyles. My name's Tim Kasser and I'm a psychology professor at Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois. For the last 30 years I've been studying people's values and goals, and in particular the materialistic values and goals that are encouraged by consumer capitalism. One of the things that we found in this research is that the more that people focus on these materialistic values and goals, the less they tend to care about the environment and the planet. For example, we found that when people prioritize these materialistic goals, what they do is they care less about carbon emissions, they care less about how their lifestyles damage the planet, and they behave in ways which actually cause more damage, use up more resources, and emit more carbon, thus causing global climate change, or contributing to it at least. Now, our research has shown that one way to diminish these materialistic values and goals is to focus on what we call intrinsic values. Now, those intrinsic values are for things like your own personal growth, for caring about the community, and for caring about the people in your world, your loved ones. Now, one of the things we know about this research is that the more that people focus on these intrinsic values and goals, the materialistic values and goals tend to get deprioritized. Furthermore, the more that people care about intrinsic values and goals, the more they also tend to care about the planet. So what this suggests is one of the ways forward for trying to deal with the problems of carbon emissions and climate change and habitat destruction is to develop interventions and develop policies that help people focus more on intrinsic values and to focus less on materialistic values. Now, the animated video that you're about to watch, which I helped make about 8 or 9 years ago, is going to explain some of this research, and it's also going to talk some more about some of the suggestions we have for how to make those interventions and policies happen. I hope you enjoy the video. Now, just so you know, right after this whole segment is going to be over, I'll be joining you live for a question and answer period. I hope you'll be able to join us. Thanks. Every day, Americans are bombarded with hundreds of messages suggesting that the good life is attainable through the goods life by making lots of money and spending it on products that claim to make us happy, loved, and esteemed. On the news shows, we hear a near constant refrain from economists and politicians about the importance of consumer spending and economic growth. And around $150 billion are spent most years to embed consumer messages in every conceivable space, from TV shows and websites to public bathrooms and escalator handrails. Lately, marketers have even been paying actors to drop sales pitches into conversations in bars and city parks. But commercialization and consumerism also reach deeper, worming their way into people's psyches and encouraging them to organize their lives around higher salaries and owning more stuff. Unfortunately, this can come at a high price for the well-being of both people and the planet. Research consistently shows that the more that people value materialistic aspirations and goals, the lower their happiness and life satisfaction, and the fewer pleasant emotions they experience day to day. Depression, anxiety, and substance abuse also tend to be higher among people who value the aims encouraged by consumer society. Strong materialistic values also influence our social relationships and thereby affect other people's well-being. Scientists have found that materialistic values and pro-social values are like a seesaw. As materialistic values go up, pro-social values tend to go down. This helps explain why people act in less empathic, generous, and cooperative ways when money is on their minds. When people are under the sway of materialism, they also focus less on caring for the earth. The same type of seesaw is at work here. As materialistic values go up, concern for nature tends to go down. Studies show that when people strongly endorse money, image, and status, they are less likely to engage in ecologically beneficial activities like riding bikes, recycling, and reusing things in new ways. Clearly, if we hope to have a happier, more socially just, and more ecologically sustainable world, then we need to develop ways to diminish the power of materialistic values in our personal lives and in society. Two basic principles for change can help frame the way forward. First, we need to understand what causes people to prioritize materialistic values. For instance, studies show that people focus more on material things when they feel insecure. So instead of buying a new handbag or power tool the next time you've had a blow to your self-esteem, consider a different coping strategy, like spending time with friends or taking a walk outside. Scientists also know that the more that people are exposed to the media, the more they prioritize materialistic values. A couple of ways to diminish the onslaught of consumer messages are to use ad block to hide ads on the internet or to hit mute when commercials play on TV. But these steps can only take us so far. We also need to get active and start to remove advertising from public spaces and from our children's schools so that people aren't exposed to materialistic messages so often. The second principle for change involves promoting intrinsic values for growing as a person, being close to one's family and friends, and improving the broader world. The research shows that intrinsic values not only promote personal, social, and ecological well-being, but can also act to immunize people against materialism. It's that seesaw again. As intrinsic values go up, materialistic values tend to go down. So part of the trick is to build a life that expresses your intrinsic values. That might involve spending more time with people you care about, finding meaningful work, even if it pays less, and taking part in volunteer opportunities for causes you care about. But again, changing our lifestyles is not enough. We also need to advocate for policies that promote intrinsic values. For example, countries like France and Bhutan have recognized that they can't only focus on GDP and other measures of economic growth. Now they are starting to regularly assess citizens' well-being and sense of connection to their communities so as to develop policies that truly encourage these intrinsic values. Similar efforts are underway in some parts of the United States, but they need more support. The grip that consumerism and commercialism have on our world can seem inescapable, and there are certainly powerful forces that push materialistic values on us. But by making changes in our personal lives and by working for broader societal changes, we can break the hold of materialism and be freer to live our intrinsic values. That, in turn, would help us to take important steps toward greater personal well-being, a more humane society, and a more sustainable world.
Hello, my name is Solitaire Townsend and I'm so pleased to be making this video for the Global Landscapes Forum. Now, I am the co-founder of an organisation called Futerra, and we're a change agency, and what that means is that we work on the logic of sustainability strategy, targets and processes, and also the magic of sustainability creative, marketing and messaging ideas. We put those both together for some of the world's biggest brands and national governments and NGOs, and when we're working in partnership with the United Nations. Now, as you may have noticed looking behind me, we are one of the partners and we're the creative agency that worked on the Good Life Goals. And I know that you've already been talking about the Good Life Goals, that from helping ending poverty to being fair to loving nature. Now, the Good Life Goals were designed out of a passion that I had that sustainability cannot just be for institutions, it must also be for individuals as well. Not just powerful people, but also people power. There are 7.5 billion human beings on this planet, and between them they are taking hundreds of billions of decisions every single day. Some of those decisions are impacting our world in ways large and small, from what coffee you buy, to where you farm, to where you fly, to how you live, to what you buy, to how you vote, to what you teach to your children. And as individuals, we have to have a role to play in changing the world. And remember, this is not just about changing your consumer behaviours, it's also about every single choice that you take. Now, the Good Life Goals they're designed around the targets of the SDGs, and they give a measurable way that all of us can make a difference to the world around us. So thank you so very much for using these. Please do remember to include people, everyday citizens, all of us, your own friends, your own family, your own children, in your plans of how you're going to make a change. Because if we don't take people with us, how can we ever expect to get where we're going? So I wish you a great conference. Thank you so very much, and live your best good life.
On the eve of the Global Landscape Forum in Kyoto, I am pleased to address the global landscape community as Mayor of Bonn, host to the Global Landscape Forum offices and the Climate Change Secretariat, and as President of ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. Our City Council has recently adopted the first Bonn Sustainability Strategy. Based on the 2030 Agenda, the strategy focuses on 6 thematic areas: mobility, climate and energy, natural resources and environment, labor and economy, social participation and gender equality, as well as global responsibility and one world. On the landscape side, we have joined the BioCities network, advancing and promoting organic farming. Landscape is also a cornerstone of our resilience, for example, as a defense line against floods of the River Rhine. Renaturalizing streams helps us restore habitats and safeguards us from heavy rains and stream flooding. We manage our parks, green and open spaces to improve our air quality, adapt to climate change and contribute to the health of citizens. With 2/3 of our city territory under nature or landscape conservation, this is an important factor. Urban landscapes are becoming increasingly important as 80% of the world's population will be dwelling in urban areas soon. ICLE is working with more than 1,750 cities, towns and regions. For all of these, appreciating their landscape and embracing nature-based solutions helps tackle the impacts of global change. And it offers high potential for resilient, climate-adaptive, biodiverse, healthy and inclusive communities as addressed in ICLE's 5 pathways to a sustainable development. We are therefore hoping for the upcoming decade on ecosystem restoration to stimulate cooperation and alliances with other levels of governance as well as with stakeholders and communities. The Global Landscape Forum has a vital role in shaping these alliances, as have local governments. Let us together take the dialogue to the next level at the annual Global Landscape Forum on 22nd and 23rd June, back-to-back to the June climate talks and followed by the 10th edition of the ICLE Resilient Cities Congress from June 26th onwards. I'm highly looking forward to welcoming you all in Bonn in June. Thanks a lot.
How we live in and organize our cities is going to be critical to a successful future. Ken Yang, an architect and ecologist, has big ideas on how skyscrapers of the future might look.
I believe that biology is the biggest source of ideas, the biggest source of invention. Nobody can invent better than nature. And so if you like, nature is my biggest source of inspiration. My contention is that 80% of the impact of the building is caused by its design. If we can anticipate the impact at the design stage, we can reduce the impact from 80% to, if we can, minimal. I think it's the single most pressing issue that all designers must address today. Otherwise, this millennium will be our last. The ecologist has a much more comprehensive and holistic view of the world. We're looking at the natural environment as well as the human-built environment, and the connectivity between the two. That means when we design a building, we're not looking at it as an object, but we're looking at it and its relationship with the natural environment. I call this process of imitation ecomimesis, imitating the processes in nature. Another aspect that we should imitate is that in nature, the only source of energy is from the sun. Everything comes from the sun through the process of photosynthesis. Whereas now, our source of energy is from fossil fuels. So until we are able to operate and run by imitating photosynthesis, it'll be a long while before we can have a truly ecological system. In the Edit Tower, what we're trying to do is to interpret as many of our ecological ideas as possible into this single building project. First thing we did was to try and balance the inorganic mass of the tower with more organic mass, which means bring vegetation and landscaping into the building. We wanted it to be low energy, so we had photovoltaics on its facades, particularly facing the east and west side, and on its roof, so that in this way it would have its own energy source. So we had sunshades which was scallop shade, so that we could collect rainwater. And then the building has its own sort of water filtration system, so the water is recycled within the building, and then the sewage are recycled, And so in many ways it is, if you like, a human-made ecosystem, but in a tower form. Within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a lot more green buildings being built. Not just buildings, but green cities, green environment, green master plans, green products, green transportation. Reduced use of cars and better use of public transportation affects the planning of cities. And so planners all over the world are aware of this, but some are in a better position to implement it than others. I believe that if we are committed towards it and that we continue to educate people and get the whole world community to implement green features and aspects, not just in their lifestyles, but in their businesses, in their industries, then we're heading towards a green future. So my dream, for the future is that it's a green dream, but as Kermit the Frog says, it's not easy being green, but we should try and make it as green as possible. And I'm very optimistic.
Welcome to my world.
He means our world.
This is Green School.
A place where we make solutions happen.
We're teachers.
And students like me. And parents
Like us.
And members of the community.
That's us.
And especially me. We come together
To make a difference in the world every day.
By living sustainably.
We learn how to solve problems.
We turn used cooking oil into fuel.
We grow our own food.
We experiment.
We innovate.
We're building a model for the future.
Join us. We stand together
And support you.
to become more green.
We are entrepreneurs because we want to make the world a better place. To be a model for the future now.
Through education, we engage with the local community.
We invite people from all around the world to connect with us.
And join forces.
We can make a difference.
Education is our ally.
The future of our planet is now.
We are the future.